Left foot, right foot. With 2 simple steps, I've moved from being part of the audience to being part of the show. It's the exact journey we all want to make, right? We want to stop watching entertainment and now be a part of it. But much like this journey, it looks very simple to watch someone else do it, right? They just sell a script. How fucking hard is that? But actually what's happening is much more difficult. My brain is firing all sorts of neurons into my body to power blood to my muscles to lift me up to stage. There are several different ways to get on this stage. Just as you'll see today, there are several different ways to make the journey from the audience to being a writer. What we have today are 3 different people who have taken 3 different routes to go from being people much like yourselves, sitting in an audience at a panel, wondering how on earth can they get their voice and their material out to the masses. And so as we'll bring each of them up, you'll see the different stories or the different paths they've taken, rather. You'll see and hear each of their stories, and hopefully you'll laugh and be entertained and inspired. So the first thing we're going to do is bring up Lon Zimmet. Bear with us for a second. We had to Skype him in for reasons we'll discuss in a moment. And if this all breaks down, I don't know what we'll do. All right.
Hey.
Hey, buddy. I don't think we have visual. Is your camera on?
How's that?
There you are.
Hey.
Hey, everybody. This is Lon Zimmet. Welcome to DePaul.
Hey, everyone. Am I on a big screen over there?
You are on a giant screen over here.
All right, my head should never be that big.
No, it's a very big brother. So, Lon, why don't you, I guess, start with explaining why the hell you're not here?
Sure. I was going to be there this weekend. I was extremely excited, but I'm working on a new show. Michael J. Fox has a new show coming out. And, you know, the way it works is we're in pre-production right now, which means you bang out as many story ideas, as many stories, and as many scripts as possible, because once you go into production, you start getting behind. The problem is that it's a new show. You don't totally know what the show is yet. You don't totally know who the characters are, what the stories are. So early on, breaking those stories is tough. So we had about 5 or 6 broken stories. Me and my writing partner had episode 105. And, you know, we sent all the story areas to the network for notes. And they had notes on basically the first 4, which are pretty significant, which you have to address. And they're fair because we're all discovering, you know, what the show is. But 105, they loved.
Okay.
So you have to write something. And by the way, I say that, not saying like I'm a great writer. It's all room broken. So it had nothing to do with me.
But your name's going to go on it, and you're going to spearhead the writing of it.
On it, right. We're still the writers of it. So with that, we wanted to go off and write something. So all of a sudden, instead of being off 3 weeks from now writing a script, it's start working on that script.
Right. It's due basically Monday, right?
It's due next Wednesday.
Okay, fair enough. So not a lot of time.
Not a whole lot of time to get this thing done.
Okay, and for those of you who don't know, like NBC has put a ton of money into this show, so this is a big deal, a huge amount of responsibility that Lon is being entrusted with, which we can forgive him for not being here, I think.
Sure.
So all right, so you're in an awesome place now career-wise. Did you just, you graduated college and they just handed you a job, right? Is that how it works?
That's more or less how it happened. No, I was
Where did you go to undergrad?
I went to Syracuse undergrad.
Okay.
And then after graduating from there, it was pretty obvious that I was unemployable. I went in for an unpaid internship after college at a production company.
Okay, out in LA or in New York?
Out in LA.
Okay.
And that's where I went right after college. And
How'd that work out?
One of my very first internship interviews, not even for money. I wasn't even asking them to pay me. I sort of bombed the interview, but I was like, maybe this is okay. Like, I can be a PA and make photocopies.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my way out, I walked into a closet instead of the door that I was walked in from, and I did not get the job.
So what happened after that?
After that, I said, you know what? Maybe I'll try going to grad school since no one wants to hire me. So I had a few samples at that point. Mm-hmm. Because I knew in undergrad that I wanted to be a writer.
Okay, so you came out of undergrad with sample scripts?
I wrote about 2 or 3 features when I was in undergrad.
Okay.
And I used, so I knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to write movies at that time. And I think I used one of those for my USC application.
Okay.
And I got into USC.
Awesome.
Which was great because it proved to my parents, like, hey, look, I'm not a total screw up. Maybe I have a future in this. So I got into the grad program with you. I think you remember.
Yeah. I remember it vaguely. And so, were you writing with your partner at that point, or is that a relationship that evolved while you were at SC?
At that point, I wasn't. At that point, it was just me. I had been writing features, and then I had taken a sitcom writing class where we had to write a spec sitcom sample, and I'd never written a sitcom before. I didn't think I was particularly funny, so I recruited one of my friends, my roommate at the time, to basically do my homework with me and write this office spec. He was the funniest guy I knew. It was one of those things we'd gotten drunk a million times, talked about writing a script together.
Right.
And finally said, hey, I need you to help me write something now.
So you guys wrote an office spec. Do you remember the premise?
The premise was a blood drive.
Okay.
And it was back when Michael Scott was running the office, and there was a blood drive outside, and he was convincing everyone to go and hid the fact that he hadn't done it.
Right. The secret was he hadn't done it, right? Yeah, it was really a funny script. So what did that script do for you?
That got us our first agents, which is pretty unbelievably lucky.
Right,
through a mutual friend, I'd met like an assistant over at the agency that was then Broder, and we were literally people who just saw each other out at the bars and hit it off and become friends. And then one night he mentioned to me that he was an agent assistant, and I said, hey, I'm a writer. And he said he was in TV, and I said, well, I got a TV script.
Right.
So I sent it over to him, and this was before I think I even handed it in a class. Like, I didn't know when I was going to see this guy again. I was like, just take it.
Right.
And he liked it enough, passed it along to 4 agents over there, who all read it, loved it, brought me and my writing partner in.
Right. And how did that meeting go? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
I was unbelievably terrified. We walked in, it was 2 of us, and it was 4 of them. We were at a big conference table. And I don't even remember anything. It was sort of a blur up until at one point, I guess I must have been bright red because of the agents, because I was so nervous. And one of the agents looked at me and said, yeah, what's going on? You're pretty red. And I just like froze, and luckily Dan jumped in with, oh, well, he's been drinking all day. And that got a huge laugh, and after that, like, I calmed down a little bit. It's like, all right, now I can ease into this.
Nice.
But I was a wreck.
And so you walked out of that meeting with a rep, or how'd it work?
We walked out, and we basically left it as, this is the only sample you guys have written together. You're going to need something else if we're gonna assign you. So it was fine, because at that point we were thinking, good, we made contacts. These are people who read our stuff in the future. We'll just work on something else. So we walk out already like terrified, like, oh man, we have to write something else. That's good, like we don't know how to do that.
Right.
But then as we're in the car on the way home, the agents call us and say, yeah, we're gonna wreck you guys.
Nice. That's a good phone call to get.
It was a good phone call to get. So somewhere between us leaving the room and getting in the car, they were just like, yeah, we don't need to see anything else.
Okay, and then you managed to parlay that into work for Bill Lawrence, but not on TV, right?
Not on TV. It was on a web series before anyone knew what the hell a web series was.
They still don't, by and large.
Don't know how to monetize it or do anything.
Right.
But called Nobody's Watching, which was a failed pilot that they, got leaked to the internet, and it got something like 1 million hits, which at the time on YouTube was like, oh my God, this thing has 1 million hits. This is amazing. Right. So based on that, they turned it into a web series. So me and Dan, we got hired to work on that. We were splitting something like $450 a week, working out of the Scrubs hospital, because Scrubs was still on at the time. Our office was literally this tiny little room that used to be in the mental ward. So it was like a mental patient's room with barred up windows. But through that, we made great connections.
Right. So that ended up not going, right? There was a chance it was going to go to series.
There was a chance it was going to get 6 episodes on NBC, but that never happened.
Okay. And so where did you go from there? You started taking meetings, or?
We started taking meetings. After that, yeah, after that, we started, going out for staffing. And we'd written at that point, I think we'd written 2 more actual pilots. So not
right. In addition to your time on Nobody's Watching, you were also working on your own stuff,
we were
right?
also working on our pilots. So we'd written 2 pilots that had gotten a great response that people loved. Nobody had bought them. They were primarily samples, so nobody bought them. But, we were getting interviews off it. We went out for staffing our first year, did not get staffed. And then the second year, it looked like we were not getting staffed. We'd probably taken 4 or 5 meetings each year until our agent said, "You guys are doing something wrong. You guys, I don't know what it is. You guys are great in the room. We love you. Executives love you. But for some reason, when you're in the room with showrunners who want to hire you on shows, like it's just not clicking. You're not getting it."
Right. And did you ever figure out what the problem was?
Well, we were talking with Dan's girlfriend one night and asking, what's going on with the show. And what we realized was we never at any point complimented any of the pilots that we had watched before these meetings.
Right,
and
okay.
to be fair, it's because we thought most of them were bad. So it's, we're complimenting things like it was shot really well. But if you're talking to writers, they don't care how it was shot. They want to hear that it was funny. And
right.
Like,
hear how enthusiastic you are for their idea.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So the next meeting we went on, and this was the last meeting, this was the last show staffing, it was worst week. And luckily we did like that pilot, but we just went over the top and said, we love this thing. This is the best thing we've seen in years. Like, holy cow, you nailed it. And, we got the job.
Awesome.
So it's like, oh, right, all we have to do is compliment the show. And it's funny, that showrunner, Matt Tarsis, who I love and is one of my friends now, when we were on the show, was hiring another writer, and after a meeting, said exactly what we had thought. He said, the guy just didn't say anything nice about the show. He didn't feel like he wanted to hire him. And he said it was the best advice I ever heard still was just lie. Like, it doesn't hurt anyone. If you want the job, just lie. So even on bad shows we go in on now, it's just like, oh, this is the thing that's going to save television.
Nice. And so once you got that first gig, it was pretty, you guys have stayed in, right? You've worked pretty steady since then?
We've stayed in. We've worked pretty steady. And actually, the show we're on now, the showrunner was a guy we were on staff with on worst week on that first job.
He's not going to take questions. Okay. So then you worked your way up from worst week. Where'd you go after that? Scrubs?
After that, I went to Scrubs.
Okay. And then?
Season 9, the good season that everyone remembers.
Right. Everyone's favorite. And then at what level did you get bumped up to the next TV level, from like staff writer to executive story editor?
From Scrubs to Better With You, which was our third show, which was an ABC show. Then we got bumped from staff writer to story editor.
And now, are you guys like lollygagging and screwing around when you're on hiatus, or are you keep pretty busy, right? Like you'll take any job they'll give you?
We try to write, during hiatuses, we've tried to write features. We've written more pilots just to have the samples and try to get out there. So you work. I mean, my last 2 hiatuses I spent, getting married, and so I was busy then.
Yeah, that's pretty time consuming, I hear.
Yeah, and then the last few hiatuses, like I'm supposed to be on hiatus now, but we went right from happy endings to this job. And last year we went right from happy endings to Men at Work. So we haven't even had a hiatus to work on our own stuff in forever.
Right. And do you feel like it's easier for you guys to stay in because you're a partnership, or?
Yes. We are told constantly what a deal we are because we're 2 for the price of 1. So even at a producer level, it's still, if you can hire 2 people for the same money you're going to give to a single person, you're gonna do that. So it has helped us keep getting jobs. It makes us very hireable.
All right, and what piece of advice would you give for young writers? We're sort of wrapping it up here with you. We know your time's very valuable and we appreciate it. What would you say to the audience watching you on this giant screen that they ought to know something maybe you wish you'd known at SC, or?
Keep writing is the best advice. Just pump out material, and it's tough, but don't fall in love with it, because rewriting is so much more important than writing. Because most of the time you want to get it out, but you don't know what the thing even is you're looking at, and that's true when you're sitting alone in a room, and especially when you're employed on a show. I mean, we're going to write a script this weekend, and it is going to look completely different by the time it's on the air, just because everything is rewritten.
Because it's in a constant state of flux.
It's right, exactly. That's just the way it works.
Awesome. Well, we thank you very much for joining us here via Skype. We hope that script turns out to be awesome. Can't wait to watch it. Everybody, Lon Zimmet.
Hey, Jordan?
Yeah, Jordan's off on the side.
Oh, Jordan, nice to have.
All right, we will. Thank you, buddy. We appreciate it.
All
All
right,
right, bye-bye. All right, so now we're going to bring up Jordan Pope-Rousch and Ian Shorr, and we will discuss pretty much the same type of stuff with them. Come on up, guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Ian, I suppose let's start with you. It's Ian on the end there, Jordan right here. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm a feature writer out in Los Angeles. I knew our fine host here back at USC, and I had compromising pictures of him that basically forced him to invite me out here.
A lot of
Very
us
true.
did.
A lot of pictures.
Yeah, I mean, they should be on the internet by now.
Change my name. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Park City, Utah. Grew up going to the Sundance Festival, and that was kind of the first thing that made me want to see movies. Just you know, being 12 years old and watching things that were terribly age inappropriate, and you know, that was the thing that did it.
And how old were you when you wrote your first script?
I was actually 13. I had gone to I tried to go see Train Spotting when that came out, and the fascist running the theater would not let me into it. So I walked.
Can't imagine why.
I know. Like I was gonna, dude. I could tell him, like, you know, I'm gonna wind up messed up anyway, regardless if you let me into this. So I walked next door into the Barnes and Noble, and I found a copy of the screenplay for Train Spotting, and the language in that thing was just so alive. And so I decided to go home and write my version of Train Spotting, which, if you can imagine, like something written by a 13-year-old in Utah who's never seen drugs, it was a masterpiece.
That was your first thing that sold, right? So then, you're 13, you want to be a writer. How do you get from there to LA? What was your first step along the journey?
Well, I mean, like, there's sort of two parts to this. My initial intention was, well, like, after that first script, I wrote one per year every year after that. So by the time I was 18, you know, I'd written a few, and they say you need to write, like, you know, 2 or 3 bad scripts before you write a good one. I had written a bunch more than that. So, like, by the time I was 18, I had one that people could read all in one sitting, which I thought was good, even though I read it now and I'm like, so what I did, I was like, all right, I have something that I think I might be able to sell, but, you know, I'm still living in Utah. I guess I was 19. I was going to community college at the time. I was like, I have no agent. How do I get this out there? So I decided to start a fake management company out of my bedroom. It was called.
What was the company called?
It was called Sundance Literary Management.
That's very official sounding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in Park City. I can't hide that fact. So I was using my cell phone and the Hollywood Creative Directory, that old phone book of producers, and so I created this alias, this guy named David Lortz. And David would call different production companies and say, like, hi, I'm David Lortz. I'm with Sundance Literary in Park City. We take writers who've gone through the summer labs here and we get the material out to the town. I've got a client who I think might be a good match for you guys. You know, wanted to send a sample your way. And eventually people started saying yes, and eventually one guy said, I want to meet with your writer. I flew out to LA to go meet with this guy, just hoping that he wouldn't recognize my voice.
Had you
have a distinct
altered your voice
voice,
at all
too.
as David? Or?
I would go a little bit, like a little more Barry White with David.
Okay.
But you know, like honestly, like I felt like I was walking into the lion's den just because this whole thing was all based on bullshit. So I go into the office and I realized that my fears were all for naught because the producer barely looks at me the entire meeting. Like, he's, you know, talking about his ideas for the movie, but it's kind of obvious that I could be anybody. But the thing is, he loves David. He's like, I think you've got a very talented player on your team, and regardless of what happens with your career, if you come out here, you should keep him around. So I was like,
he's a real go-getter.
Yeah, he's. I was like, just don't ever ask us to be seen in the same room. So what happened was he wound up putting down like a $1 option on the script I'd written, which is is nothing, but to me at the time I'm like, that's awesome. I've got a deal with a guy who produced Pretty Woman back in the day and hasn't done anything in 10 years. So I realized like I'm on the brink here. I'm about to make it. This means that I can fire David and get a real representative. So I had David start calling agencies, just cold calling, and like since I'm using the directory, like I call William Morris
To
and
replace himself?
no to get an agent as well as me.
Okay.
So I call William Morris, and in the directory nobody is listed for what department they're in. So I wind up at the sports department over there. They're like, oh, you want literary? So they send me over to someone. I somehow wind up on the phone with Spike Lee's agent. And I start giving him the whole spiel about Sundance, and he interrupts me in the middle of it. He's like, wait a minute, I've been telling you guys at Sundance to do this for years. Just get people right out of the lab, get them working. Okay, here's what I want. Anybody you have right now who doesn't have West Coast representation, I want you to put their scripts in an envelope and overnight them to me. Here's my FedEx number, put it on my tab, send them. So I'm like, okay then. So I get off the phone with him, and I immediately start calling my high school buddies, like, you got a script? Good, give it to me. Just like, just scrambling together to put like a big pile of scripts together, and use this guy's FedEx number, send it off to him, and I never hear back from him. But the following Monday, as I'm getting up to go ride my bike to community college, I get a call from a Utah number on David's cell phone. But David doesn't get calls from Utah. David's all about LA. So I answered it just saying hello, and they say, hi, is David Lortz there? I'm like, speaking. They say, hi, David, this is the Sundance Institute. Now, apparently you've been fraudulently impersonating our company, calling different, I'm like, click. So I hang up on them. And I put the cell phone in my backpack and ride my bike to class, and I just sit there and sweat all day long. I'm just in a puddle by the end of the day. So come out at 4 o'clock, check the phone. There's like 3 messages from Sundance on there that I decide I need to do this responsible thing, so I delete them without listening to them. And go home and discover that there's a cease and desist letter from Sundance's lawyers in David's email box threatening to sue me/David. And at that point, I decided I was going to retire from the management game. But what's kind of great is now that I'm out in LA actually writing for a living, I'll occasionally go on a meeting with someone that David talked to back in the day.
Did they ever pick
So
up
I'll be like,
Do you tell them the truth at this point?
occasionally, yeah, I can now, yeah. So I'll be like, you don't remember me, but I have spoken to you. But I'm glad that it didn't work out for me at that time, because at 19 I wasn't at all ready. I would have, even if I had sold that script for any decent amount of money, even if my career had begun at that moment, I would have been handed my first set of studio notes, and I would have had a meltdown. I would have been like, they want to change my movie. And so, I took the longer route. I went to USC.
But you went later in life, right?
Yeah,
Your
I went-
freshman year was, how old were you?
I was 21 when I went to USC, which is an awesome way to make friends. And then they turn 21, and then you have no friends.
Right. And how did you find that experience being in college a little bit later?
It was honestly, it was the best thing for me, just because if I tried going earlier in life, I just didn't have the work ethic. I wasn't treating it like a job. And once I got into school, I realized, okay, I've got 4 years where I can write as many scripts as possible and get as good as I possibly can, because there's no way I'm going back to Denny's when I get out of here. That was my job previous to college.
And so within that framework of USC, you were able to write, how many scripts did you do in your 4 years, would you say?
Probably 12.
Okay. And was it a script you wrote there that got you your manager, or did you get an agent first? A real manager?
Yeah. Well, I never had to have David come out of retirement, which is lucky. My senior thesis script at SC was the thing that really broke me in. I don't know if they do this here. Like, do you guys do like a pitch fest here?
Yeah, kind of, and we have a script list. We don't quite do a first pitch thing, but they're all encouraged to learn how to pitch. We hope to one day get to having an event like that.
Got it. My senior year script was just something that I wrote really quickly and had a lot of fun with, and it was just something that was really commercial and accessible. And
What was the logline?
logline was it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off for Sociopaths. It's about a bunch of kids who have diplomatic immunity, can't get in trouble, and so they get in ridiculous, insane amounts of trouble because of that.
And it had a really gripping opening scene, right?
This is actually the whole reason why I got signed was when all the graduating screenwriters were coming out of SC, they stuck us in a room with a whole bunch of producers and agents and managers and had us going around pitching our thesis scripts. And they taught us the completely wrong way to pitch. They were like, all right, you're going to get 5 minutes per person, you're going to get 3 minutes to pitch your movie, and in that time you're going to do the title, the genre, the logline, your first act, second act, third act, climax, denouement, and then open up for questions.
So
It's an
completely
impossible task.
Yeah.
wrong compared to what actually occurred.
Right, so like anybody who was pitching in that style was basically pitching information dump the movie.
Right.
So I did that for a few tables and just kept bombing and just watching their eyes glaze over. And plus, like they were giving booze to these people. So by, about an hour in, like nobody was paying attention. So I realized I had to change something. So instead of pitching my entire movie, I just pitched the opening sequence. Like if you've got a genre movie that has a really killer opening scene and you want to tell people what your movie's like, don't give them the full plot. Just give them that scene. Give them like whatever scene excites you the most. In this one, the opening is we're in a car. We're in a cop car going 100 miles an hour through Miami, and the guy behind the wheel isn't a cop. He's a 17-year-old kid. He's got a bunch of his friends with him, and they're all high on liquid ecstasy. The camera's flying all around the car. It's shooting through people's eyes into their brains, where you see like sparks popping around the gray matter, and for some reason, Come On Feel the Noise is playing in there. And you zoom out of somebody's ear, and the car gets a tighter shot out by the cops. They get surrounded. They get all kinds of guns on them, and it just looks like these kids are fucked. They're gonna get handcuffed, they're gonna get booked, they're gonna get hauled in, they're gonna go to jail for the rest of their lives, except none of that's gonna happen. They're not gonna get booked, they're not gonna get handcuffed, they're not gonna get arrested. They're just gonna walk away, and the question is, why? So said that and then stopped talking. Like the whole pitch took less than a minute.
I've read it and I want to read it again. So you wrote that script and that got you, did you get your manager first or your agent? Or?
Yeah. I signed with Bender Spank. And
based off of First Pitch?
Based off of First Pitch, yeah. Like pitched that there. They called me up the next day, asked me for the script. They called me up like 2 days after that saying, we want to sign you. And then a month later, we sold it. And then after that, I went around to a few different agencies and got an agent. And after that, it was kind of off the races.
Mm-hmm. And so what was your career step after selling it? They just made your movie and gave you a truckload of money? Is that how it goes?
Well, my parents didn't make a deal with Satan when I was a baby, so that did not happen. With that one, that turned into a giant learning experience. And this is going to be something that's true for anybody who's going into features or I imagine TV, is that sometimes you'll sell something and they'll buy it not because of what it is, but because of what they think they can make it into. And sometimes what they want to make it into is not at all what you had in mind. So like what I sold them was something that I realize now would not get made. It's a $40 million hard R action movie starring teenagers. And they're like, we like that, but we want to do something more like Gossip Girl. Went on like a year-long process of doing rewrites for the studio and trying to kind of make it into what they wanted without losing my own voice and my the thing that made me passionate about the project. And then the studio went out of business. This was Overture. So basically, I outlasted them.
Good job.
And so where did you go after that? You had while you were working on those rewrites, were you also doing another script, or?
Yeah, I think everybody's process is different, but for me, I'm happiest when I have like 5 irons in the fire at the same time. Like I'll wake up and I'll work on script A for 3 or 4 hours, and then I'll go and get lunch, and then I'll come back and work on the second script for 3 or 4 hours, and then I'll drop an outline for something else in the evening. Like the thing is, like it's a much more competitive environment than it was 20 years ago, because all the studios are getting their development budgets slashed. So because it's so competitive out there, you need to just be constantly churning out material. Like just having one script, even if it's awesome, is not going to be enough in the long run. You need to have like 5 things.
Because when you go on a general, what are the 3 questions you get asked?
Why are you not wearing pants?
Right. Where is my daughter?
Right.
And can I have my car keys back?
Yeah.
But it's like, who are you, where are you from, where'd you get this idea, and what are you working on now,
what do you have next? Yeah, that's the thing is that when you go on these general meetings, everyone is looking for a way to be in business with you. Like there's this idea that, like, you know, once you sell your first thing, that you're kind of walking into this hostile environment. But the truth that I've discovered is that everybody in this business wants to kind of be a hero. And the way you get to be a hero in the business is you discover somebody, or you find a new writer, or you come up with just some killer concept, or you see something that nobody else saw. And that's what they're looking for anytime they sit down with you. They said, they're thinking, is this going to be the person who's going to make me a hero?
But it's important to note that the word you use is business, because it is, at the end of the day, it's about making money. Like, they don't just want to be your friend and make a cool film. Like, they want to make something that can make money, right?
No, yeah, that's
Some
absolutely
asshole said
true.
that to me once.
Right.
Yeah, it's not show friends, show, but yeah.
I was like, that's not even like a pun or
Yeah,
anything.
that doesn't even
I mean,
sound
no,
good.
Of course it's not called that. That doesn't make sense.
And so, where did you go after that? You did rewrites for that, and then you sold your next project?
Yeah, while I was working on rewrites for that, and just like slowly feeling my moral fiber die while working on that thing, was going out on other meetings, and a studio called Alcon came along with, they wanted to do a remake of Strangers on a Train set in a high school. And because my last thing involved teenagers, like for a hot minute, I was like that guy that you went to when you wanted to write like an action movie or a thriller with young people in it. Which is actually brings up one thing, which is that whatever script you take out for your sample, make sure that it's in a genre you love, because you're going to be writing that genre for the next 3 or 4 years.
That's such an important point. It really is. That's look how specific that was.
Yeah, they do
Teenage
tend to
action.
pigeonhole you a bit.
Right. I mean, like, don't be afraid of getting pigeonholed, because being pigeonholed means you get paid. They make a list when they want to make a certain genre of a movie. Like, they have, you know, the 5 or 6 guys that they call when they want to do a comedy or a horror movie. And if you can really show that you're really good at that particular niche, then you get on that list.
But you haven't only done features, you also did a web series, right?
I did a web series that was right when I got out of college, and that was it was something I just kind of fell into, and I think it takes immense strength of character to work for the web, because you either have immense freedom, you can do whatever you want because you're basically working for yourself with very little at risk, or you're kind of working for the man. Like the web series that I did was for ABC Disney. And so we were working with almost no money, which usually means you have a lot more freedom, but instead we're dealing with like notes that you would get from ABC Disney.
So now, what are you doing? You just sold did the Strangers on a Train just sell recently, right?
No, the Strangers on a Train thing, that was actually right after we sold Exempt. That was back in 2008, and we had an entire saga on that, and that, you know, will hopefully someday get made. But I had a brief period of maybe a year or two where I was kind of out in the wilderness with my career, because I was trying to transition out of writing movies about teenagers. Like, you know, if you sell a script that's in one genre, and even if you love that thing, you might eventually want to explore other areas. And if you do, it sometimes takes a couple of what they call transition scripts. Like if you start off writing romantic comedies, but what you really want to write is a big action movie, what you might have to do is write something that's kind of in between them as like a middle script. And that might sell, it might not, but what it'll hopefully do, ideally, is show people that you're capable of doing something other than what they know you for. So I wrote a couple of transition scripts, and then back last year, wrote a big science fiction movie that was kind of like it was an adaptation of Count of Monte Cristo set in the future that Warner Brothers bought, and it wound up on the blacklist.
Which, do you want to explain to them what the blacklist is?
Blacklist.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, how do we describe that?
It always sounds bad.
Yeah.
It's the best thing you can be on as a feature writer. It's based on the McCarthy Red Scare sort of blacklist of
Right.
But it basically just means that you were one of the best unproduced scripts in Hollywood that
And it's
a
voted
ton
on by
of
all the
people
creative
agreed
executives.
upon. Yeah,
and
there's a number system to it. How many people? I don't know if they're given 5 choices or whatever they're given, but
Yeah, I think at the end of the year, this one company does like a poll amongst all the agencies and management companies, and they had people vote on like what their sort of top 5 scripts of the year were, and then they pick like the top 50 out of that. And if your script winds up on this list, even if it hasn't been produced, or in some cases, even if nobody's bought it but everybody's read it, then all of a sudden your career starts moving very quickly. Like just being on that list means you start getting calls for things. It means that certain things that would have never seen the light of day, like that movie where Mel Gibson has the beaver on his hand. You can thank the Blacklist for that.
that's a tremendous script, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to give you all some perspective, like Django Unchained was also on the Blacklist. So it's a pretty elite group that he was, a pretty elite company you had there. So what have you done since then? Are you doing any rewrite work, or you're still pretty much originals?
I mean, the majority of what I do is spec stuff. Like I've done some studio assignments, and
how would you describe that process?
That I mean, like first they strip you naked and they like light up like a hot poker.
Right.
With the studio assignment thing, they do these things called bake-offs, where they have some script that's on the open writing assignment board, which is a thing that goes out to all the agencies saying like, we have a script that needs a rewrite. We're looking for this type of writer. Agencies will pitch various clients of theirs. You go in and you might be competing against 10 or 20 other guys. You'll pitch your idea to them, and if they like your idea, then they'll get a whole bunch of free work out of you as you do like another outline or another 5 outlines, and eventually they might give you the job. Now it's pretty good money, and it's a good experience, and it's really good for making contacts, but it almost never really moves your career that far forward. Like the only person I can think of who got an open writing assignment and rewrote somebody else's script and got his career going was Ted Griffin on Ocean's 11. It doesn't happen very often, because even if you knock it out of the park, there's still this idea that you're just building off of what someone else had.
Because it's not your material, it's
Right.
not your idea. It's just anyone can improve something, but can you build it from the ground up?
Exactly.
It's sort of
It's
what they're
sort of like somebody who comes in and does some refurbishing on a house that's already been built.
Okay. So what has been, would you say, the moment where it was most surreal, or the moment where you felt like you'd arrived as a writer? Like, has there been any big?
It was actually probably this past 2 weeks. Last year, after Cristo sold, went out for a few assignments, but like there was 2 or 3 ideas of my own that I just really wanted to write. So then, rather than spending a couple months at a pop chasing studio assignments, I just hunkered down for pretty much all of last year and wrote 3 or 4 new scripts. And within the past 2 months, one of them sold to Fox, and the other one we start shooting in about 2 weeks.
Awesome.
So just having all of that happen at once was like, okay, this is what it's supposed to feel like.
Right, right. Very cool. Well, we thank you very much for sharing your time with us here at DePaul.
By all means.
Now, every good story needs a but. Jordan, how'd you get here?
Well, I cried at first pitch. I was at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, and I cried behind some ferns because everyone hated, to a man or woman, every single person I pitched to hated what I said to them.
What were you pitching?
Like Baby Punchers, the TV
It
show?
was it was a comedy about a guy trying to make the Olympic speedwalking team who also happened to be a serial killer. It was called Serial Walker. It's tremendous. But everyone hated it, and God, do I understand why. That's the worst idea for a movie in history. Unless I'm going to make it myself. Like, that's just terrible. So that... So began my career.
Well, so back up a second. You're from Dayton, Ohio.
From Ohio, yeah, Dayton, Ohio. I always wanted to write. I never knew how realistic that was, but I went to Emory University in Atlanta, and I majored in creative writing. And once I kind of got my life together there and stopped partying a lot,
But like after college, what kind of jobs could you get with that?
Well, that was the thing. I mean, I loved it, and I did a great job, but yeah, there was nothing that I really saw that was that interesting to me. I wrote PR in Atlanta for a year, which is just a weird industry of lies, and I wanted to go somewhere that was more truthful, like Hollywood. And so I knew that I wanted to be a writer.
I say grave robbing, but
yeah, it's just they're all the same. I knew I wanted to be a writer, and so I applied to a bunch of creative writing schools and got into one film school and got into USC, and figured since there was such a great supporting industry, should it not work out? There's so many. I mean, God, how many like other jobs have you seen that you could do in that world? Like, there's a lot of interesting things going on, in my opinion. I mean, and so I was like, maybe I could do something else if it doesn't work out or whatever. Right. And so I went to USC and I wanted to write comedy, and that was my thing. Nothing really worked out initially when I graduated, so I became an assistant to this directing team. Who had done a movie, and they did a lot of commercials and stuff. And I thought it would be for like a year.
How long were you there?
For almost 5 years.
How often did you think about quitting?
In waves. Like, there would be moments where like I would like clean up dog pee and think about quitting, and like say like, I have a master's degree. Like, what's happening?
But your friend who's
How
now
is this possible?
right.
Yeah, like,
but your buddy who's now your agent gave you some good advice, right?
So yeah, exactly. So my a friend of mine who is actually now my agent. Now I have like a whole weird team of people, but he's at UTA, and he was like, man, you can quit if you want, but like, there's going to be a line of people waiting to be those guys' assistants. And you're meeting everyone in the industry that you could possibly ever want to meet. And yeah, you don't have a lot of free time, but it's going to be hard one way or another. You're going to have to work your ass off. So you can work at Barnes & Noble and not know sort of what you're talking about or who to talk to or who to get advice from or anything, and write and have a lot more free time. Or you can do what I did, which was work like 9 to 7, and then I would write from like 9 p.m. till like 2 or 3 in the morning every night and drink a lot.
Right. Well, you gotta somehow keep that candle burning at both ends.
Yeah. Got good genes.
And would you say that more than even SC gave you sort of inroads into the industry in terms of understanding how things worked? Like, you had to read
I think
every
you could
script,
say that.
right?
Yeah. Like I learned a lot. I learned about what. I think in a sense I definitely learned about what people wanted. Like, and you made a good point about. Your first script and realizing that it's like not exactly, it wasn't really like a movie, even though it was great, however it was written or whatever, like there's so much you realize about, or how they changed your idea from like what it was to Gossip Girl. It's like there's so much you realize about what they're actually trying to accomplish, and really the biggest thing I realized working there was like it's a big money. It's one of the best run industries in the history of the world. I mean, it's recession proof. It didn't 3 years ago when America was at its worst point since 1929 or whatever. It was the highest grossing box office in the history of Hollywood. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. It's that they have their algorithm figured out, and they, I guess I just sort of realized how they like to twist and move and manipulate everything into something that people can actually, will actually pay money to see, and how actually that's not the selling out, life ruiner artistically kind of thing that I thought it was initially.
Like it's okay to sort of compromise
that it's
your
not
vision. Selling
out. It's not even compromising anything. It's just working within the confines of what you're trying to do within the construct of the business that's set up, like.
So how long did it take you to figure that out? What were those 5 years like?
Yeah.
So was that just full of constant upheaval, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I was writing the entire time, and I think we put in the thing, I was jokingly, but it's true that I got 10 attaboys and 15, like, you're a great writer, get the hell out of my office. Like,
right. And you
had a lot of meetings, and it seemed like people really dug what I was writing, but in the end, I had a friend who worked at UTA who put UTA's script covers on my scripts, and that's how I ended up getting anyone to even care about what I was writing. And I'm sure there's 100 other ways to get people to care, but that's the way it worked for me. And eventually I got a manager.
So that was your first step, getting a manager?
Yeah, I mean, literally on like the fifth feature that I had written, or something like that.
And what was the log line?
The log line of that was basically three guys who all have their own lies that they're telling each other, three best friends, decide to rob the guy who used to bully them in high school.
Okay.
And so they all played out. One guy's like supposedly was a Hollywood writer, and it turned out he wasn't. He was in debt to a bunch. I think it was just a true story. I just realized that. Anyway.
But okay, so that got you.
So that
Trevor,
got me
your
a manager. Yeah, Trevor Engelson at Underground. I almost forgot where.
And then, so did he start to sort of shape your voice towards more marketability, or what was the?
Well, he's great in that, like, his thing is that he's genuinely, I think he's broken a lot of people into the industry, and he really digs that. And I think that's, you know, if you're going to find someone, I think, you know, people luck out, and because they have a lot of talent, it can work at a big place. I think that a lot of times when you're younger, you're much better off finding someone who's hungry too, and whose thing kind of is like, I like breaking new people into the industry. You know, I think you get lost at big places a lot of times.
That's absolutely true. Like, if you sign with a place like CAA for your first time and you don't sell anything within 6 months, they forget about you.
It's like you kind of annoy them, I think. So he really, I think I've gotten lucky in a lot of ways in that, like, he really wanted to, like, he was like, you have a unique voice, and I want to foster that. And if it doesn't work out right away, like, you know, we'll keep plugging away. And, you know, for me, it was like, well, I really need it to work out.
Right, because you were miserable at your job.
Yeah, I mean, I liked my job, and some parts of it were cool.
Yeah, I mean, you got to see the world, but then
we traveled a lot, and it was neat. But, like, yeah, there were portions that were demoralizing.
So what was the first thing you wrote with Trevor's guidance?
So the first thing that I wrote, you know, honestly, I think I probably did, like, I did a rewrite of that script that I just mentioned that we tried to sell. And then I one day just showed him this thing that I'd written my little brother.
Okay.
Which, it's funny that you mentioned a minute ago, like, I don't remember how you phrased it, but essentially something that you were happy to be doing and kind of screwing around with that made you really happy, and it worked out and sold for you. And I found that, like, with a lot of my friends' stories, like, that's the truth. That's what really worked in the end for someone. And so this was the thing that I wrote my little brother, who's 10 years younger than me. I wrote him a college guidebook. I'd written him something when he turned 16 called How to Drive Like Me, the Best Driver in the World. And it was just about how to drive as awesome as I drive. And it was just stupid. And so when he was going to college, I was like, I'll do it again. And it'll be like 10 pages. And it ended up being like 120 pages. Like all these pictures of like me and my friends in college. And I loved it. And I really had a ton of fun writing. It was the most fun I had writing in a long time, because I didn't feel any constraints. I didn't feel like I was writing towards any grand goal or
you weren't
any
chasing the
industry.
market. You were just
what
trying
people
to
wanted to see. I was trying to make my little brother laugh.
Right.
It said,
How
like,
do you do
Dear
in college?
Dylan was the first line of it.
Right.
So he and his buddies like absolutely loved it, and they studied it, and they would text me quotes from it. And then he was kicked out of school for partying too much, for following the guidebook.
Hold on one second. We're going to open it up to questions in about 5 minutes. So if you want to make your way over here, that would be great, to the microphone. So you write.
So I was like telling my manager the story, and he was like, "Let me read it." And I showed it to him, and he was like, "We got it. This is incredible. Like, we got to do something with this. This is like one of the best things I've ever read, because it's pure." You know what I mean? And I think that was like that actually was what worked about it. It wasn't a screenplay that I had written for anyone, and I think that had been something that had stifled me creatively in the past. That I think there was a lot of time I did like market chasing kind of things where I was like, people want to see a script about this. This is what's hot right now. And that's just the wrong way to approach it, man. Your voice in the end is 100% what starts you and what keeps you going, I think. Still, like, I read his Substitution's tremendous. And the second I started reading, I was like, this kicks ass. 5 pages in, because you have a great voice. And that's what keeps people going in the industry. And that's what my manager recognizes, like, this is who you are as a writer, not what you've written before. This sort of pure distillation of you know, your writing is it.
But when you talk about voice, do you mean like drawing on your own inner pain, or like telling your story, or do you mean a point of view?
I think it's a point of view and a world outlook more than anything. I mean, I think that drawing on personal stories is incredibly tricky. Like, my best friend died while we were together 5 years ago. I've tried for years to write something on that. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
You know, I think the more you try to tap into some real shit that happened to you that's really crazy and dramatic, good luck. That it's cathartic, I think, in the moment to work on something like that. But like, no, I don't think it's.
No one needs to read it.
I don't
like,
think
no
it's.
One's gonna
Yeah, like it's more for you than anything. And I think actually, what you can do is take emotional experiences and manners in which you dealt with things or little details and push that into other things that you're writing, and use ways that you looked at the world, for characters, on behalf of characters or whatever. But in the end, it's like who you are. It's your point of view. It's your worldview that I think kind of goes into your best writing.
So yeah, so if you're following that through line, like you can't chase the market and you can't quite always draw on your own experiences. So it's somewhere in the middle where you have to find like the part of you that someone else wants to see, right?
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was just saying, everything you're saying right now is that's the best possible advice I can think of, which is that when
on the panel, folks.
when a network or a studio looks for a writer, the thing that makes them remember a writer out of like the thousands of scripts they read and the whole stack of them they got on their desk is if you've got a project that sounds like it came from you and absolutely nobody else.
Right. That no one else could have written that thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what my manager saw in that. And so then became the tricky thing of what do we do with this? I pitched it around as a movie for a little while, and I had some great meetings with that, but it just never, I guess there was an American Pie where there was like a guidebook or something I wasn't aware of, but by the way, there's a rub that will happen to you guys 50 times. I'm like, that's already been done in some form.
Like, no, but not like I got it.
Right, and so then you have to maneuver around that. But so then we realized like we could maybe try to make it into a TV show. And there's a chicken or egg thing with TV that it's really tricky to get a job writing TV if you haven't written TV before, which is a good policy, I think, to keep new creativity out of Hollywood. I think I'm happy that they've set it up like that. I just think like keep the same people in there. And so my reps were like, we should reverse engineer a television show. You make it into a blog, and the blog will get, it was this asinine idea, in my opinion, at the time. I remember being like mad when I left the meeting, so I was like, that's just, you're gonna make it into a blog, I'll put 3 or 4 posts a day for a year or two, it will get popular somehow. People will then, and it actually did happen in the end. So it's great.
But for a year, you're doing this on fake, right?
For a year and a half, nothing ever occurred. My buddies liked it. People
what was the
liked
format
it.
of the blog? It was a
the
little
format
bit.
of the blog. So I couldn't. I did it all myself, and I pretended I was my younger brother, and that I sort of slow rolled the whole guidebook I had written him into the blog and made it like these are emails that my older brother is sending me. Isn't he crazy? It was like shit my dad says. I'll be honest with you.
This shit my brother says.
Right. And I'm sure the second anyone reviews it, that will be the crux of 90% of the reviews. So, yeah, so that was it. I was like, oh, my brother's crazy. And then it just kind of, then it actually became a...
Well, you had to keep that a secret, right? You didn't want...
Yeah, no. We set up all these weird ways of like structuring the website and
so it looked genuinely like it was
who
coming
paid
from
for
the
it.
brother.
Yeah, it was...
Right.
Was an interesting thing, and yeah, but then what was cool is that it actually became a character. It wasn't even me anymore. Pretty quickly, it was just this guy that was like crazy as all hell and like sexist, but like really intellectual. Like so he would like justify everything.
And it's for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a mixed media blog where there will be just straight writing. There will be some cartoons. Would you call them
There's
cartoons?
a lot of graphs.
Yeah, a lot of graphs, a lot of drawings, and then occasionally like little audio clips or...
Yeah, I made a couple music videos.
Yeah.
One's called Drugs.
So...
It's a good song.
So you eventually got to the point where you were taking meetings on that, right? But you had an email account
right, so...
for the blog.
Yeah, it set up this like fake email account for the blog, and I forget how the first meeting started, but I literally got like an offer in the email account from ABC or...
Yeah, if I remember right, you were like taking meetings and then you go through the email
Well, I was taking
account.
meetings to make it into like a movie.
Right, okay.
And then I started getting weird TV offers to this email account.
Which you weren't checking with any regularity, right?
No, and there was one where like ABC was like, "Hey, we emailed you like 90 days ago." And I was like, "Shit, I gotta check this thing around." So if you're gonna do something like that, just check on it, because I almost really like.
So the key to success is fake something.
Yeah, I mean seriously, like what a weird industry.
So you're once that started happening, you took meetings around town.
Right, and so then the first thing that happened was NBC offered me a bunch of money to go away, which was a really tricky situation, because it was basically like, we'll give you this money and then it's ours and fuck off and thanks for the idea.
Right, we'll do whatever we want with it.
And that was like, God, I wanted the money and I could quit my job, and like, it was a true dilemma for me. But at the end of the day, I didn't go to, I'm not doing all this work to be known as a blogger who sold his like idea. It's never what I wanted in a million years. So I turned it down, and then had to like, you know, keep going from nothing again. And I had to pitch it to all the networks. And so I ended up, you know, getting pitches at every single network. And the first 5 passed on it, and they pass like right away. Sometimes they pass, or they buy it. Sometimes they pass like within like an hour of you pitching. So like you're still on your drive home in LA traffic, and like they
then you get the call like,
so
sorry, buddy.
Oh, for my first 5, and I was like, I should have taken that NBC money. And I was looking really good right now.
But then you go into Comedy Central.
Then I went to Comedy Central, and it was just perfect from jump. And
so you're now where? You're shooting the pilot, and they paired you up with?
Yeah, so they paired me up with with a guy. I can't be the showrunner on it. That's another tricky thing, because I don't have enough television experience to do the 100-hour-a-week crazy job that being a showrunner is, which, if you're a sports fan, the best analogy is being a player manager, because you have to know what every single person's doing, assign everything to everyone. We're editing episode 1, we're shooting episode 2, you know, Marcy's writing episode 3, but you also have to write episodes, and you have to be in the room and rewrite everyone. So it's a crazy job. You can't do it right off the bat. So they brought in this guy who would work for Arrested Development, and my name is Earl, Eastbound and Down, and named Brad Copeland. And he and I hit it off, and he agreed to work on the show, and so that kind of was like all they needed.
But through a weird twist of fate, like he wanted to write about his brother, right?
That's funny too. Yeah, so they met with him independent of me, because they just wanted to work with him, and they were like, well, what kind of stories do you want to tell? And he said, well, I've always wanted to tell a story about me and my older brother. And they were like, are you kidding me? Like,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
And so that's.
And so where are you in that process now?
So now we've cast 2 out of the 3 roles. We still can't find the younger brother, which we thought was going to be easy, but we got Miles Fisher is going to be the older brother, who's really great, and then Reggie Watts, who actually wrote the part of the buddy for called Reggie in the script, is going to play himself.
Awesome. So we hope obviously that goes to air.
Yeah, seriously, it's Reggie Watts, guys. Come on.
Let's open it up to some questions, I guess. We ready over here?
Hi guys.
Awesome.
Hi.
So my name is Juan. I want to thank everyone for bringing this program up. Special thanks to Theo and Christine. So my question to you guys was, is it necessary to move to LA and be able to get all these things done, or is it possible to get it done from here, or just like flying in to the city?
If it's something you're super serious about, you got to move to LA.
I agree. Yeah.
It's sort of like wanting to be like an Olympic downhill skier, but you don't want to move out of Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, you do got to move there, unfortunately.
I mean, like,
you can kick serious ass, and they'll still, in that, be like, so when you move here,
yeah.
like it's just, I think that you can definitely get yourself going here, or in New York or anywhere, but, and, you know, the fact that everything's on PDF now, and et cetera, I think has helped that out a little bit. But at the end of the day, man, yeah, you gotta be there mixing it up with everyone, because there's just this funny window of opportunity, and also tiny group of people that you need to kind of be talking with regularly and be in their mix, and it's hard to do from out of state.
All right.
All right, thank you guys.
Jordan, I have a question. How did you market your blog? How did you build visibility?
I didn't at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I really didn't. That's a great question.
Like there were even times where you were like, I don't know where these 3,000 hits came from, right? Like
yeah, there was people
where it
in
got
other countries
funneled to
reading
some
it,
other
and
site, or
yeah.
like it ended up on Funny
I
or
didn't
Die
do
somehow.
anything. I wish I could give you like a really good answer for that. Or like, it's like
Well,
tactical.
that's even better. That's great.
Yeah, I did nothing.
Cool.
But you did, you poured work into it, right?
I
Like,
worked
you
my ass
kept
off on
submitting
it.
things.
And by the
you
way,
kept trying to-
end of the day, is that not the best advice really? Like
Yeah.
constantly work on something at all times. Have 5 things going. If you're not into the one thing right now, work on the other thing. Like
Yeah, like, and if one of those 5 things is really well done and really commercial, visibility is not going to be a problem for it. Like people will dig a tunnel to your house to find that thing.
yeah, I think just like the right kind of people, Hollywood-wise, were reading it. Jerks.
Hi, my name is Adam. I was wondering, do you guys have like a plan every day of what you're gonna write or how you're gonna write, or a system that you do to maybe get into the groove of writing? You know, because sometimes I find it difficult when I try to write. It's, you know, I do it like days off. I can't stick to it always.
That's okay though.
consistent.
That's part of it,
Yeah,
man.
that's part of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you write during the day. I write at night. I can't write during the day to save my life. My house is like real organized and I clean everything.
But you were actually talking about this last night. Like, what have you found when you're staring at the blank page?
Yeah,
the
I mean,
cursor?
yeah. Sometimes I just write gobbledygook for a while, like I write like la la la,
Just to
just
literally
to fill
look
it
at
up
something
and
on
like
the
get
page, right?
going. Like yeah.
Yeah, so it's like imagine like you've got a balloon and you want to create static electricity so you can stick the balloon to the wall. Like you need to rub it against the surface until it builds up the electricity. Like I think a writer's brain is sort of like that. Like it requires like a certain amount of, you know, just sitting there and looking at the screen and thinking, or, you know, if you're gonna say like, okay, I'm gonna write some dialogue here, and even if it sucks, I'm just gonna write 5 pages of it until my characters start talking to each other.
Yeah.
You can always delete it later. So yeah, I think that's part of it. The other thing is just figuring out when you get your best material done. Like if you're a morning person, if you're a night person, and just carving out that time of the day to make sure you can do it every single day or 5 days a week. Like just guard that time like it's treasure.
Exactly. Yeah. Guard that time. Make sure that nothing. And I think I have a lot of respect for people who can write during the day, because my inability to write during the day comes from everyone else being awake, and I can communicate with them. Like once everyone goes to sleep, I'm finally like safe to write. No, but yeah, it's like whatever it takes. I mean, I have a long runway before I can take off. Like, and some people don't. Some people can just bust straight into it. So I mean, it's guard that time and just do it constantly. Keep going. And that's a great point about like, you can write 2-3 pages of just crap dialogue, and then finally someone says, and what's really cool, and it sounds like fake or like corny or something, but like sometimes my characters say stuff and I'm like, hey, that was a good one. Like, because I didn't know that, because it's you get rolling with
Right,
two people talking to each other.
Right, when your characters start surprising you, that's how you know you're
Yeah.
sort of in the zone. You're locked
There's
in.
there's a Robert, I think it's a Robert Frost quote. No surprise to writer, no surprise to reader. So if you're not, you know, if it's not making you, you know, shocking you every now and then, making you feel great about the moment, then no one else is going to give a shit either.
Cool. Thank you.
Is that it? No more questions? All right. So about process, you said like obviously guard the time. Do you set like word count for yourself? Do you
No,
have page counts, or you're just like, I have 3 hours, I'm gonna write whatever.
sometimes you're on
I
like
want?
deadlines. And,
Yeah, but I can't count. That's why I write. I'm just not good at math.
yeah, I'm terrible, man.
But no, like I mean, if you're on a deadline, then yeah, the stuff's gonna get done no matter what. But I think in my own experience, it really does help to have an idea of like, okay, I want to get this sequence done today, or I want to, you know, like I want to get up to this page today. And one thing that's been really helpful for me is, you know, like if I say like, okay, I'm gonna write, you know, these next 7 or 10 pages today, I'll stop myself in the middle of whatever the last scene I'm writing is. I won't finish that scene just because If I do, then it means I'm sort of starting from scratch on the next scene when I sit down the next day. So by by leaving like half that scene unwritten, that means I can just jump right back in the next day, like I took like a commercial break or something.
Right, so you stop writing when you know the next thing that's going to happen, and that makes it easier to start the next day?
Yeah, like if you're writing like, you know, your big action climax, it's sort of like leaving yourself with a cliffhanger. Like if you stop like, you know, a page before the scene ends, it just makes it that much easier just to dive right back in the next day.
And who do you guys bounce your work off of? Like if you're starting a new script, will you
My
bounce
mom,
the ideas off of
just-
her?
That's it.
She give good notes?
Yeah, everything's great. She says,
But do you have like a support system? Do you have?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a solid group of friends that it's, you know, give and take. You really got to give kick-ass notes to your buddies to get it back. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
right, and you know, once you have representation, that's helpful. But I prefer to give stuff to my friends who are writers before my reps, because I always have a grain of salt kind of opinion with them of like how I think they're very smart, but like I like to get more of an unfettered, like non-business.
Yeah, your friends are never going to make a dime off of it, so
Right,
there's
so
not
they're
that
going to give you
influence.
a more pure kind of.
How about you, Ian? Do you show it to friends or?
What's up?
Do you outline?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, they say there's two types of writers. There's gardeners and architects. You know, somebody like Elmore Leonard is a gardener. Like, he just kind of starts going. He doesn't really have an outline or a plan. He just gets a character that he thinks is interesting, and then he builds the story up from that character. And sometimes it's awesome, and sometimes it's a total mess. And then you've got architects where they plot everything out really meticulously beforehand, and then, you know, go in and sort of fill in the blanks on there. And you know, some people are kind of a combination of the two, but you know, if you find yourself really favoring one of those categories, then by all means follow that. Like, if you're naturally a gardener, don't be an architect, or vice versa.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm closer to gardener than anything, because what I find is that and by the way, here's the biggest point. You have to write 3, 4, 5 drafts of every single thing you write. And if you ever think your first draft is great, like, you're wrong. Sorry.
Unless you're right, in which case I hate you, because people who write awesome first drafts are evil.
I mean, I just don't know who writes a perfect first draft, but like, I always have to go back in my second and third and fourth drafts and put the architecture in. A lot of times, it's comedy, so like, I tend to meander a lot of times, and they'll just be like 9-page scenes where I'm like, this is a 1-page scene. Like, all that was supposed to, and then I have to take parts that I liked, put them in a separate file, like called like a certain type of jokes or whatever. Go back to it. And
But
steal from
do
it,
you guys feel like you've gotten better at rewriting
hell
the
yeah.
more writing experience you have?
Yeah.
And like it's easier to let go of your ideas?
That's actually, for me, become the more enjoyable part of it.
I agree. I used to hate rewriting so much, and we talked about this last night. I mean, I know a lot of people who quit, who were in our program, who don't. You probably know a lot of people like this from year to year who like don't write anymore. And I think a big problem that they all shared was no one wanted to rewrite, because it sucks when you first start doing it.
It's
You've
awful.
worked
Like you've spent
for
so
6
much
months
energy.
or however long on something,
Yeah, and then you have to
and
start
now you're
from
supposed to
square
write it again.
What?
It's
Screw
terrible. But I totally agree.
Yeah, but then it becomes fun, because you're like, oh, the hard part's done. Like,
Right.
the bones are already there, the movie's already written. Now all I'm doing is going in and making it awesomer.
Right.
Okay. And what would you say has been the part of the industry that didn't live up to your expectations thus far?
The chicks.
The what?
Yeah, jokes, yeah. I was gonna say the drugs, but maybe I have the wrong guy.
The drugs are great.
But would you say, is it the job you always thought it would be? Is it?
Man, I mean, yeah, it's awesome, but like it's just an ungodly amount of work, and I guess I didn't think it would be. Honestly, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't think it was gonna be that hard, and it's incredibly hard. I mean, I thought it was just like, woo. Once you're in, and you just write, and people are like, another gem.
People are just gonna be lining up like, Mr. Shorr, what do you have for us this week? And he's like, well,
You just have to always remember that no one cares at all about you.
You're alone in the
Unless
universe.
you make them care. Unless you make them care.
Right.
And you have to remind them why they should care constantly with your good work. Which is
Yeah, you got to remember, like, this town has the attention span of a gnat. And because of that, like, unless you're constantly keeping yourself on people's radars with really good material, then they forget about you.
Yeah, dude, I'm writing 3 other features right now, all of which I'm like talking and developing another TV show, because I know that like the second this stops working, I'm screwed if I don't have other things ready to replace it or already going alongside it.
And what would you say about, like, do you guys have any great advice about how to be in a room? Like, can you be that sort of Charlie Kaufman in adaptation, nebbish, awkward writer?
No, I think that's, I think that, I don't know. I think too many people come across it as like weird, like live in the basement kind of.
But you have to be engaging in those meetings, right? Because there's so much time spent working
but
with
like
other
the
people.
entire industry is sort of relationship based. Like to talk about what you were asking a second ago, in terms of like, what didn't live up to my expectation. Before I moved to LA, like, just from watching movies and TV, the idea of like the Hollywood exec or the studio guy is, you've got like Ari Gold, like somebody who's super aggressive, abrasive, who is just a dick and proud of it. And while there are definitely people like that out there, the great majority of the people I've worked with are actually lovely to be around. And the reason why they're able to keep their jobs is because people want to work with them.
Yeah, they want you to be great.
Yeah.
They're not there to like with you or intimidate you, which I thought like my first like 10 meetings, I was like, oh God, this person.
But like, they're sitting in their office waiting to be entertained, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think a big thing is going back to rewriting it in the process is that you're gonna, and they know this, they hired you to do a movie. They have to work with you for anywhere between 3 months and 5 years.
Yeah.
So you better be someone that they want to work with. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not, then, and that's like non-negotiable. There's no movie where they buy it from you and they're like, and we're into production. You're always going to be working on it again and again and again. And if you're argumentative, if you're overly defensive, if you're
Can't take a note.
You can't take. I mean, that's a huge thing too.
Yeah, if you're overly precious about your work.
Yeah, being too precious about stuff, and that was the thing I think too when I first started, that I was like, oh, that's selling out if you like change your character. It's so not, and it really truly is not. The Comedy Central can tell me tomorrow that like the younger brother is gay and fat, and I need to make corny gay and fat jokes. For the whole episode, and I will, and there'll be good gay and fat jokes, and it'll be fine.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. And the show will go on, and whatever, and I'll get what I'll still have fun writing it, and it's better than working, anywhere.
Well, on that note, if you guys weren't writers, Ian, what do you think you'd be doing?
Serial walking. No. This was the only thing I ever loved. I have no idea.
I literally have no idea either.
Fair enough. I guess that's a pretty good note to end it on. Well, thank you both very much for coming to DePaul. We really appreciate it. Let's give it up to Ian Shorr and Jordan Pope-Rousch. Stick around. We have a little break right now, and then